What is up, you awesome kisters? It is CistReactZ, guys. Today we're checking out Film Theory. I saw the FNAF 2 movie before it came out. I think this is going to be my first film theory on the channel, but don't quote me on that. Let's go!
The teaser trailer for Five Nights at Freddy's 2 has finally dropped, and it managed to pack so much about its plot into just 50 seconds. Enough to solve this movie months before it's out.
How?
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Film
I got a lot
Theory,
of questions on how this movie is going to work, but let's see what Film Theory thinks.
By hitting that subscribe button. So, loyal theorists, the time has come. Five Nights at Freddy's is coming back to theaters this year.
It's still crazy to think it's coming out soon.
The marketing for the Five Nights at
Why
Freddy's
did Toy Freddy have an Infinity Gauntlet?
First big look into the film coming with its official teaser trailer. Now, obviously, FNAF is a huge part of theorist history. I mean, it feels like we've done literally hundreds of videos about this franchise over at our sister location Game Theory.
Sister Location Game Theory. See what he did there.
An entirely different timeline to theorize about. Matt trusted me to take on franchises like this as the film theorist. He trusted me to do our very first.
I only gotta wonder what Matt Pat's FNAF notebook looks like, man,
time to do the same
and how he's gotta pass that on to the next
theorists.
theorists.
In the past couple of weeks, Tom and I have sat down and really put our heads together to figure out what the heck is going on here. Like, clearly this movie is taking cues from the FNAF 2 game.
Like, it's so crazy. I feel like we live in the best possible timeline for Five Nights at Freddy's, because, like, look at how accurate these two look to each other. Like, this isn't some corporate slop, like how they tried to do Sonic movie at first. But, like, this is actually, like, corporate peakness right here. Like, everybody paid attention. I just scrolled on accident in full screen.
And this is clearly a sequel. What are the consequences of that change? And what does it mean for the story? Well, it might not look like we have a lot to work with to figure that out.
1.6 million views. We are in the best timeline for Five Nights at Freddy's.
Did we really crack this movie wide open with just that? Well, we figured out more with less, and I think we've done it, loyal theorists. By looking at this teaser, comparing it to what we know from the game series,
my God,
adding in our speculation from the fallout of the first movie, and using the rules and laws of filmmaking in horror series like this, I believe I've solved where this movie is headed months before it's out. And not only that, but I think we can get a pretty good idea of where the inevitable FNAF 3 movie is headed to. So grab your spring locks.
I wonder what they're gonna do for the FNAF 3 movie, because it feels like Afton is coming back for this movie.
Let's make sure we're all on the same page after this first movie, just in case you need a little refresher.
Now that I think about it, they probably should have made this movie like a prequel or something like that, because, like, it feels like Springtrap is going to appear in this movie in some way, shape, or form, and it's like, that kind of, I don't know, ruins the point of 3.
Sure. And I mean, it has been a couple of years at this point, so understandable. Five Nights at Freddy's was the story of Mike Schmidt, a down-on-your-luck young man taking care of his kid sister Abby as he takes on a job as the night security guard at Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. Mike is haunted by guilt for the death of his little brother Garrett, who was murdered by the serial killer William Afton.
It looks so cool.
Also so happens to be the owner of Freddy's and killed several other children at the pizzeria years ago, and now those spirits haunt the restaurant and want Abby to become one of them. So Mike teams up with Afton's daughter Vanessa to take down Afton, save Abby, and hopefully find some peace for the ghost children. Well, at least until this sequel hits, right? Now, with that out of the way, let's go through this teaser shot by shot and frame by frame. We open on a poster.
Let's go frame by frame.
The glass on this poster display is broken, which may mean that it's the same poster we see.
Which means that it's Five Nights at Freddy's.
If you don't remember, Max's brother and his gang of hooligans smashed and shattered this glass when they broke into Freddy's in that movie. Not sure if it's exactly the same poster, but it probably doesn't matter since I doubt we'll be spending a significant amount of time here anyway. Regardless, we do know that we are going back to the original pizzeria in some way. We know this thanks to some of our fellow FNAF tubers.
Oh my God, Daco!
This movie. Here we see that the studio
Daco mentioned
in front of the restaurant, but not the whole thing, so I doubt we're going to be spending a ton of time inside of it. Either way, this is just an establishing shot for us and the teaser, so let's move on. Next, we see a shot of an endoskeleton turning on.
The endoskeletons look so accurate, dude.
Parts inside of the animatronics that let them move and work. We actually see some of them getting worked on in the previous movie, but it's also worth noting that this one from the teaser, it isn't the same type. This is an Endo 02, a more advanced type of endoskeleton that we first saw in the FNAF 2 game. And I mean, hey, that makes sense. Like, it's the FNAF 2 movie, of course they're taking cues from the FNAF 2 game. Anyway, you can tell this thanks to the curved mouth on this one.
And that weird looking rib cage you got.
Had squared off mouths. And there's a voiceover for William Afton welcoming us back to Freddy's.
Welcome back. Are you ready to start the show?
It's a nice
Like,
meta touch
he's
to get us
definitely
back into
gonna
this
come
world.
back as
But
Springtrap
in universe, this
and do
is
some
likely
stuff with
a
the
recording
toys.
or a flashback to when one of the restaurants is having its big opening. Since
Could be a
Afton is
flashback, too.
welcoming us back, I'm guessing that this is the sister location. It just seems more relevant than, say, the original location undergoing some sort of renovation and then reopening just for the sake of it. Either way, I expect that Afton's ghost will be using this audio to great effect.
By the way, I expect everybody who goes to see the FNAF movie, and if Afton at some point says sister location, I expect you to go as crazy as people went when Jack Black said chicken jockey. If Jack Black says if Matthew Lillard says sister location at all during the FNAF 2 movie, you are expected to jump and lose your shit. But in a polite way, you know? I don't know how you're gonna jump and lose your shit politely in the movies, but in a polite way. Or maybe just not at all, so I can avoid a lawsuit.
Like, if this is an actual audio recording, I could see him using it to torment Mike and the others. It would just be super creepy, and I'm all for it. Suddenly, we see ourselves in some sort of circus or fair. It's almost certainly Freddy Fazbear themed, since we see kids in the background dressed up as characters from Freddy.
The blue hair is a great touch.
There are also some themed attractions using those characters here. I'm almost certain that this is going to be an event called Faz Fest. We know that this is likely going to be a big part of the story, since those YouTubers I mentioned earlier, like Daco, visited the set and found posters for this event. Now, this is interesting because the idea of a circus or of a carnival or fair is a big talking point in the FNAF community right now. I briefly mentioned this in my last FNAF movie theory.
Yeah, they're a
circus.
circus.
In the lore of the Freddy's games, there was an event
they reviewed the
Faz Fest
scripts
that ran from around 1970 until at least 1983. It's a huge part of the history of these characters in this world, and Scott seems to be bringing these ideas into the film universe in a new way. Let's be real, that makes sense with the way the movies have been streamlining and combining the expansive lore of the series, so yeah. The next thing we see is Abby pulling up to the second Freddy's location on her bike. This is the sister location, so to speak. So there are actually a few things we can gather from this shot. First off, if we look at both the state of the restaurant and the surrounding area, this location has been abandoned for a long time. The outside
it's got
of the
a lot of growth on it,
and the parking lot is overgrown with weeds and grass and the like. We can actually see this more clearly in those behind-the-scenes set visits from the FNAF tubers. Oh, and funnily enough, this building is actually in the same parking lot as the facade of the first Freddy's
location. Can we get a
Razbowski
mention
for this movie? But just so everyone's aware, that doesn't mean that they're going to be in the same location they built. Enough, this building is actually in the same parking lot as the facade of the first Freddy's location.
I can't tell if that's Deducer's footage or if that's still Daco's footage, because I remember Deducer made a video talking about it, but he never like actually went on the set.
That they built for this movie, but just so everyone's aware, that doesn't mean that they're going to be in the same location or even anywhere close to each other in the actual movie. Film productions do this sort of thing all the time, reusing sets and locations.
Speaking of Jack Black,
changing the camera angles or background details to make them seem like different locations. It just saves on production costs, which is almost certainly what's happening here, since this is a relatively low-budget horror film. Anyway, the second thing that we can gather from this shot of Abby, well,
it's kind of crazy how low budget in movie films is like 51 million. That's crazy.
So she's likely been drawn here by something. And I think I know what that thing is. Right after this in the teaser, we see a shot of Mike finding a note taped to his door, reading, "Gone to fix my friends." This is probably from Abby, and it's explaining why she's left and gone to the sister location. The friends that she's talking about here in the note are probably the ghosts in the original animatronics. If you remember, Abby was super close to them in the previous film, enough so that they wanted her to be like them. But they seem to end the last movie in a little bit of peace. So this note tells us that they're still in contact with Abby, and that something has gone wrong since the last movie. Now that thing
still
that's
in
gone
contact.
wrong
I wonder how
could be
they
a lot of
appear,
things,
like in a
being
dream.
Trapped in new animatronic bodies, being tortured by Afton's ghost. But another big option, perhaps that AI has gone a little rogue in these animatronics and is somehow controlling or hurting the spirits. Anyway, we might also know how they're talking to Abby. During one of his charity live streams, Daco revealed an image of a Fast Talker toy provided to him by the film's
Fast
production,
Talker
with a screen on it reading, "You there?" Basically, if I had to guess, this looks like a way that the ghosts are communicating with the living characters. Now, this thing is strange because nothing like it has ever really appeared in the games. The closest we get is Afton's walkie-talkie in sister location, which he uses to communicate with the crying child. But even that is weird and different than what we're seeing here. The ghosts in the film seem to be able to just talk to Abby and communicate with other characters like Mike through their dreams. So perhaps this Fast Talker is a way for them to do so without needing them to be asleep. sleep. We then see a conversation between Vanessa and Mike, where Vanessa is warning him that
They're out there, Mike.
she's likely talking about the
They're out
animatronics,
there.
which we'll get to in just a sec. But the big things here? Well, first off, Vanessa has completely recovered from her hospital stay. So
Oh
I guess
yeah.
perhaps
Why did I completely forget that like she was hospitalized? I need to watch
she
the first
was
movie
not
again.
a robot as much as Matt might have wanted her to be. But the other big thing here is that she's not wearing her cop uniform, either here or in any other shot in the teaser. Don't get me wrong, she could still be a cop and just be taking some time off or something.
Yeah,
This
I was
tells
about
me
to
that she's
say, you know, that paid medical leave finna go crazy. You know, being shot by your father is kind of something that you can take time off for, and I think not get fired.
either stepped back from that role or has been let go from the force for some reason. We see another shot of her holding a gun later in the teaser, so she might still be on the force, but I wouldn't be surprised if her connection to a serial killer was somehow revealed and compromised.
Why
her
does she
job.
have a gun?
But anyway, why was she warning Mike that
It's not
they're
gonna
out
help.
there? Well, that's because of the next few shots that we see here. Yeah, we immediately see what looks like Toy Bonnie peeking in through a curtain into a window of a house. Shortly afterwards, there are a couple of other shots of Toy Bonnie lifting up some
my
sort of
gosh.
needle as if he's about to attack somebody, and then a shot of a couple cowering in fear inside of a living room. These two shots are back to back, and though trailer editing doesn't mean that they're 100% connected,
People are
I'd be
saying that's
shocked if they
Toy
weren't.
Freddy's
Big
head in the
picture
background
here,
'cause of
though,
the
is that
shadow.
Toy Bonnie and the other toy animatronics, as we're about to see, are no longer confined to the pizzeria, and that's a huge deal. See, the animatronics going out and about isn't really a thing that we ever see in the game series. The closest thing I can think of is in Sister
I was gonna
Location
pause and
when
ask
Innard
y'all a
leaves
question,
the
but
Sister
I'm gonna let him
Location
talk.
wearing Michael as a skin suit. But that's not nearly the same as the animatronics just like straight up roaming the
Damn, I just realized if we get a Sister Location movie, do you realize how messed up the skin suit scene is gonna be? Like, at some point, like, when he spit out Ennard, his body basically turned into like a, well, to what I can explain, like a blow up doll. Like it's crazy. So are we just gonna see him like kind of fall on the ground like he has like no bones, like he's just a balloon or something? Like,
the streets like we see here. This is extra strange too because it's established in the series that this would be pretty difficult for them. Glamrock Freddy from Security Breach explains that if the animatronics leave the Pizzaplex, they will eventually run out of power. Some endings have Freddy using a car battery to stay active because of this. And it's not just the Security Breach animatronics.
A car
either.
battery for
In
that
the
robot
week
is
before
crazy.
Novel, a story set in the week before the FNAF 1 video game, one of the main goals of the original animatronics is to be able to leave the pizzeria. To do this, they overcharge themselves so they don't need to charge themselves again, at least for a while. These toy animatronics might need to recharge at some point, giving our heroes a ticking clock that they can outlast as the animatronics slowly have to power down, perhaps over a series of days. So basically, they'd have to survive
five
at
nights,
Freddy's,
one might
or
say.
rather, 5 nights outside of Freddy's. Of course,
5
this
nights
scene with Toy
outside.
Bonnie isn't the only scene throughout the teaser with the animatronics outside of the pizzeria. Later on, we see a man played by classic character actor Wayne Knight peering through a closet window in a school. He sees Toy Chica on the other side before she pulls him through the window,
God.
presumably to his death. We also see her feet
Like,
in a
that's
room
some
similar
Batman
to this,
Arkham
likely
stuff,
before
pulling
or
him through the
after she's
glass
pulled this
window.
man into the room, as well as a shot of Toy Chica opening some sort of garage with her hands. There's also shots of Mangle breaking in through a window.
That is
in
such a
house,
fire
another
shot,
one of Mangle
dude.
crashing into a car windshield, and then someone getting attacked and pulled up to the ceiling by Mangle. It
Rest
looks
in
like
peace.
that last scene probably also takes place in this school, and another shot shortly after this sees another new character, a blonde girl, looking up and screaming. Given the angle of this shot looking down at this girl, this is likely from Mangle's point of view, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's immediately connected with the shot of Mangle pulling the other guy up to the ceiling.
I just thought about that too. Wait a second. We're talking, it's like him talking about the robots kind of just made me think about something. Are we gonna see the main cast withered? Cause like, well, actually, years could have went on by with like Afton, in the back room, and years could have went by without no one to check on the suits. So then they can just get all withered and messed up. And maybe that's why Abby also thinks she needs to fix her friends too, because their bodies look all withered. But then like Bonnie would have to lose his face. I don't know. Maybe the withers will be in the background in some flashbacks, because
If I were to guess, this is likely a scene
When
similar
would they
to
be
the first
weathered?
movie where a bunch of side characters are killed to show just how dangerous these new animatronics are. I wouldn't be surprised if these characters go to school with Abby and are bullies or something similarly unlikable. We also see another shot of Mike, Abby, and Vanessa in what looks like an office in the school or some random house, looking terrified. So I'm
That's
betting
definitely
this
a house,
school
ain't no
sequence is actually
office.
a big set piece for the movie. We then see a man's hand pressing a Showtime button to start an animatronic show. This is likely at the sister location since we see a different Showtime button in the first film, and that one's on a wall, not a podium. Next up, we have a shot of a silhouetted man in a hallway as doors fly open. This is actually
definitely
a really
Afton.
effective shot, in my opinion. It's very creepy. This man is almost certainly William Afton. His build just looks a lot like
Like, it's so
actor
cool that we
Matthew
finally get
Lillard,
to
and we know that he's
see
going to be
more
in this movie
paranormal
somewhere. I'm
activity
gonna say that
done
this is either
that-
a dream sequence
the
where
usual
he's
way.
haunting Mike and Vanessa, or it's literally his ghost haunting the two. Also worth noting that there are 6 doors in this scene, perhaps representing the 5 kids that Afton murdered from the rest.
Like 100% when this scene happens in the movie, he's gonna like change to his suit, or like he's gonna like flash as like Spring Bonnie and then like disappear or some shit. That would just probably like make it the icing on the cake, honestly.
And Mike and Abby's brother Garrett, whom he also killed. This is likely setting up or reminding us of Afton's connection with Mike and Garrett, which will be explored later in the series. Actually, while we're on the subject, I gotta say, I think it's surprising the lack of Afton that we actually get in this teaser. Other than some voiceover and this scene here, the only other hint we get is a shot of Spring Bonnie's hand picking up a knife.
That's weird. I feel opposite though, because like the lack of Afton would make more damn sense since it's based on the second game. Because see, we should not be seeing Springtrap in this movie unless they're doing their own weird timeline thing, which is okay, but we should not be seeing Springtrap in this movie. We should be seeing him in the next one or in the post-credit scene.
I wouldn't be shocked if he's just not as present in this film as he was in the first one.
Yeah, he
I
shouldn't
mean, it would
be.
be weird for him to come back as a big twist, third act villain when that's exactly what he did in the first movie, right? The time spent with Afton here in this second movie, in my opinion, would be better spent setting him up as a larger villain in the third film. But I digress. Now we get a shot of a large
Oh my
balloon
God.
boy animatronic
He's
eyes
real.
glowing as he activates inside one of the pizzerias. You can tell that it's that because of the
Damn, the
checkerboard pattern here
brightness.
in the back of the shot. It's just classic FNAF imagery. Balloon Boy actually returns here from the first movie where he was just like a strange haunted figurine. Talk about a glow up, am I right? So the fact that we're getting a Balloon Boy animatronic isn't that surprising. I mean, he was in the FNAF 2 game after all. But an interesting connection here that we put together? Well, in Tom's very first FNAF theory as host of Game Theory, he talked about the Fall Fest and how that makes Balloon Boy make way more sense. Like, a guy holding balloons doesn't really fit super well with animal animatronics, right? But it would make sense at something like a carnival.
And plus,
or
they're
a
all
circus.
dressed up like him,
Character
too.
Walking around, handing out balloons to kids and visitors.
And
The
his
fact
outfit
that the movie
looks
seems to be rolling the idea
not
of the circus
current,
in
you know?
here with Faz Fest just really makes that work even more.
Older.
And finally, we hear Afton yell Showtime before we see Toy Freddy walking through Faz Fest. If you notice, there are tons of other cosplayers here in the background, and it's just a really cool touch. Now then, that's all of the shots from the trailer, but what can we learn here by reading between the lines? And can we look back at some of our previous speculation and see how it lines up? Well, the first big flag that Matt and I planted in our speculation about the rest of the FNAF movie series was that Garrett, Mike's brother that Afton killed, was going to replace Charlie as the spirit possessing the puppet.
Really?
If you don't remember, the puppet was an animatronic introduced
But
in
then
FNAF
there wouldn't
2,
be no
so again,
Henry.
it would make sense for them to show up in this movie. Our big reasoning was that this would give Mike even more of a connection to Afton, offer some real emotional stakes to the other ghosts in the series, and that the puppet was teased in the credits of the first movie, spelling out "Come Find Me." Go check out our full theory talking about that if you want all the details. Well, this teaser gives us another big indication that the puppet is going to be a big player in the rest of this story, whether it's in this movie or another sequel. During some of Afton's voiceover in this teaser, we can hear the music box used to keep the puppet at bay in the FNAF 2 game playing in the background.
Welcome back. Are you ready to start the show?
So yeah, keep your eyes and ears peeled for more references to this and any indication that this version of the puppet is Garrett, because that is
I still feel like it's gonna
absolutely
be
an
Charlie,
arc that
because
they're
we
following.
need Henry,
A
right?
prediction that I'm a little less
There's no way
confident
Afton
in,
did all
though,
that
is
Freddy
my
Fazbear
analysis
stuff
of
by
the script
himself.
pages that Scott released. If you don't remember, last year
I mean,
in
there's
honor
way,
of the
but
10-year anniversary of FNAF, Scott released 4 pages
not
of
without
the
Henry.
script for FNAF 2. but the catch was that only one of them was real. If you want an in-depth look at these pages and an analysis of them, go check out my theory from last year, but the one that I thought was going to be the real one was this one, which talked about haunted plushies.
How many months ago
and
did
Mike
we see
coming to
that?
the realization that he'd need to burn them. At the time, I was confident that this was pointing to the toy animatronics being the villains of this movie and the need to destroy them. But after this teaser, I'm just less sure about that. I mean, hey, you can't get them all right all the time. See, Abby is the one encouraging Mike to burn the toys in this page, but that doesn't line up with what we see here in the teaser, where it looks like she's the one who wants to help save the plushies. So what does that mean for the pages? Well, if this one isn't correct, then I think the fourth page is. This one is from the cold open of the movie, describing a man taking his children into what we believe to be one of the pizzerias and into a secret room underneath its carousel. This page is an entirely realistic option. It actually came down to this one and the plushie burning page, but the reason I didn't go with it originally was because some of the characters present in the script probably shouldn't have been here. But now, especially with how the FNAF movie franchise is mixing and matching elements from across the entire game series and timeline, I'm less sure about that. So, okay, if this page is legit, then that then begs the question, who is this guy? This man leading these kids into some level below the pizzeria? Well,
maybe
obvious
Henry
answer
then?
would be Afton, and that this is some sort of flashback, but the page really implies that these kids are his actual children. We don't see Vanessa here in this flashback, so I don't think that this.
But then that's weird, because then it's like a cinematic parallel, because Afton was the one that had a boy and a girl in the games. Henry only had a girl, but now there's a boy and a girl, but Afton doesn't have a boy and a girl. So I guess that means in a cinematic type of parallel, or Henry has a boy too.
So, who is it? Well, I believe that it's the person who's taken over Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria and is the entire reason this second movie is happening. Hear me out.
Or it could be somebody just completely different too.
Freddy walking through Faz Fest is set in the film's modern day and not during a flashback.
Did I just fucking say did I just say straight to the camera that Afton had no children in this universe, forgetting that Vanessa was a thing? Oh my god, y'all.
Why do I think that? Well, think back to those set visit videos we talked about earlier.
I always forget.
Daco and the other FNAF-tubers found posters for Faz Fest on the facade of the rundown buildings. If this Faz Fest was set in the past or during a flashback, the building shouldn't be nearly this rundown. So, okay, Faz Fest is set during the modern day, but what does that matter? Well, think about this. The last time that we saw Afton, he was dying in his Springlock suit and his soul was being tortured by Golden Freddy. So, if
Bro was watching him, I forgot about that scene.
And if Afton, the person who owns the Freddy Fazbear franchise, is dead, who is putting on Faz Fest? Well, if I were a betting man, just like in FNAF 3 where some third party came in and bought all of the Freddy Fazbear assets to make a horror attraction, someone came in and bought all of Afton's assets after he died, and they're trying to relaunch the Freddy IP with this Faz Fest. That is the guy from the cold open page. Oh, and as an aside, this could also explain why Abby feels like she needs to go help her friend.
I wonder when Henry's gonna come into play then.
Has come in and bought up all of the Freddy Fazbear assets and are trying to relaunch things. They may have taken parts from the previous animatronics to sort of repair or enhance the toy animatronics.
It kind of does make you wonder though, like, was it Henry that like bought the place and then hired the what do we call the skater dude in FNAF 3? I don't know, but y'all know who I'm talking about. Like, what if it was Henry that hired the skater dude and then the people who, well, actually, I can't say the people who did Security Breach because that's way too far in the future, but like, we'll say like it was Henry that did the Fazbear's Fright and all that stuff. Like, I wonder if that's how he got the money to do like all that extra stuff, like to make a whole separate building and then to have enough funds to hire some guy for a whole week and then have enough funds to make a whole trap area, then have it all explode in flames. Like,
and if they mixed and matched parts
maybe Henry is connected still.
That could leave the spirits feeling mixed up and confused, similar to how the Funtime animatronics from the games were built using Remnant, which just jumbled up their spirits. If you don't know what Remnant is, bless you, you sweet summer child.
Bless you indeed.
It's a long story and not super relevant to this theory today, so just don't worry about it. Anyway, I believe that is the underlying storyline.
FNAF got way too complicated. Maybe that's why I forgot, or I always forget.
Into something way darker than they anticipated. They somehow activated the toy animatronics, angered the ghosts, and now they're on a killing rampage through this town. So Mike, Abby, and Vanessa have to stop the animatronics while helping to save the ghosts, all while they're haunted by the memory of Afton and Garrett. Perhaps literally. So that's a lot, and while that's everything I think we can glean about this movie from this teaser,
Makes me wonder about how many ghosts there are.
Look at what they've shown us here and
If
get
there's
an idea of where
a different
future
set in the
FNAF movies
toys.
are going to. See, the very fact that we see the animatronics out and about in neighborhoods and carnivals and schools in this movie means that the FNAF film franchise is following an arc traditional for these sorts of horror films. With every single film, they need to be going bigger and better than the last, from one building to a larger neighborhood and a school in FNAF's case. And that tells us a lot about the stories they're going to adapt for the third film. We've talked about this in previous FNAF movie theories before, about how a third FNAF movie likely isn't adapting FNAF 3 because it isn't as exciting a game to transfer to the big screen. Like, if
Definitely.
they kept things super faithful, it would just be like Josh Hutcherson and William Afton hanging out in an old building for an hour and a half.
And then
not
bro would be just
exactly
losing his
riveting
mind
cinema.
occasionally,
And
too.
After watching this teaser,
Getting jump scares
I think
from
Scott
phantoms.
and the filmmakers have realized this too, because they already seem to be incorporating a lot of the more interesting details from the FNAF 3 game into this movie, with someone new coming in to restart Freddy's. Because they're already likely using that plot point from the FNAF 3 game, I doubt that they'd reuse it in the FNAF 3 movie, so they'll need to do something else. FNAF 4 and being stuck in a dream makes even less sense, because it's so heavy and weird and isn't the escalation that the filmmakers are probably looking for.
I feel like they could nail
A
FNAF
dream
4
just feels smaller instead of going
in a
bigger.
certain
That's
way.
the natural arc of these sorts of films.
But
and
also
why
keeping it
eventually we get
straight up
movies like
faithful to the
Jason X,
game.
where they jumped the shark so high they ended up in space. So
Huh?
think that through. We went from being in one location in FNAF 1, the pizzeria, where most of the hauntings happen in a single place. Once you actually leave Freddy Fazbear's, the characters were more or less safe for the rest of the movie. Now we're in FNAF 2, where the threats and hauntings have escalated outwards. The animatronics are no longer confined to a single location. They're out and about, attacking people in a wider set of locations, like in a neighborhood or at a school. So what would a third movie need to do to
I hope
go
this
even
movie doesn't
bigger than
suck, 'cause it's
that?
gonna
My
be
first
weird to
thought
see
was
them
that
attack
maybe,
people
hey,
outside of a
they'll pull
location.
Jurassic Park
Like, they have
2,
no
we'll
reason
end up in a
to.
city of some sort.
Well, I
And
guess
then
unless they're being
thought,
controlled.
Nah, that'd be kind of dumb. Like, what is Scott gonna do here? Pull out the old Plushies Take Manhattan script? No, man, no.
It'll
They
definitely
could do
happen,
something
knowing
similar
Scott.
to Pizzeria Simulator, but I'm also skeptical of that.
Or it's gonna be like a fake out credit scene, but then it's gonna be like Abby's dream.
Simply because they don't really have enough characters to do the whole.
That'd be the
gather
only
and
way to
burn it all
insert
down
Plushie
like we
Takes
see in that
Manhattan.
Game. 2 movies worth of animatronics just isn't enough. So what's the next logical step then? Well, say it with me: security breach.
Security
We saw that
breach.
coming. We already have Vanessa as a main character in these films. A large mall or building like a pizzaplex is a natural escalation for these sorts of horror film franchises. This would let us introduce another new
Wow.
slate of animatronic characters that fit
We'd be
the cast
skipping a
that we've
lot of
established in these
pages.
movies, and the bones of the security breach story would allow for closure for Mike, Abby, and Vanessa. They could end the story by burning everything down and releasing the spirits of the dead kids, all while moving on from the trauma and experience themselves. Plus, it
We'd
would
be
allow
leaving the
for this
Afton
FNAF
arc
movie
so
trilogy
fast.
to hit all of the biggest and most recognizable parts of the FNAF games, while leaving other, more out there projects like Help Wanted or the novels open for adaptation down the line should the movie franchise be
I
successful
feel like the
enough to
novels might
continue.
get a TV show. If the novels get a TV show, that shit would be crazy. Like a whole Netflix series. Can you imagine that?
It all just makes too much sense, and that's why I'm planting my flag here now. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 is going to be a security breach adaptation. And hey,
Wow.
maybe if it does well enough, one day we'll get far enough along in this series to adapt FNAF World. I actually think that would legitimately be pretty cool. But hey.
How the fuck would FNAF World get adapted? That would be weird. No, FNAF World has to be like a cartoon or something like an anime.
That's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on
SpongeBob?
Film Theory. SpongeBob SquarePants isn't stupid.
I gotta watch that one. SpongeBob SquarePants isn't stupid. What the hell? And what is this creepy pasta shit in the corner? Anyway, y'all, that was Film Theory. I saw the FNAF 2 movie before it came out. This theory definitely made me ask a lot of questions, bro. Like, I wonder if the separate set of souls instead of the toy animatronics are gonna get a big send off too, because you know how in FNAF 3 the main 4 or the main 6 got like a send off. I wonder if they're gonna like put a bunch of kids in like this sad send off for the FNAF 3 good ending, Or do you guys think that the same kids possess the toy animatronics, the same kids that are in like Freddy Fazbear and all that stuff? Do you guys think they possess the toy animatronics and they're just gonna get manipulated by Afton? Let me know in the comments down below. I'll see y'all later, because I say here I'm gonna be theorizing all day, and that's film theory's job.